Right, so we've got the block here all ready to go now. So I've just cleaned up the surface of the deck again. It was pretty good anyway, to be honest, but we've just gone over it and made sure it's perfect. It's quite important, especially on steel gaskets, to make sure everything is perfectly flat and clean, or else you will get sealing problems. They haven't got so much forgiveness than a fibre gasket. I've just had to put a new dowel in there. I seem to have lost one of my other ones, but I actually had some new ones here from another job I did. So what I like to do now before I do anything, particularly on an engine that's sat for so long, I have just blown all this out with an air line as well, but I just like to rub some oil around the bores. Obviously this engine's sat for a couple of years, so it just helps it out on that first time you start it, just to keep things moving and oiled up, etc., until the oil pump builds pressure and it sort of squirts it around inside the block. It's also kind of advisable to stick a bottoming tap in all the head bolt holes. They do tend to rust up, and the last thing you want to do is round into jam in a head stud or something. So I'm just going to put some oil now in these bores. You don't need very much, just any old generic engine oil. I don't mean proper expensive running oil or nothing like that, it's just generic engine oil. Just bang it around the bores really. Don't worry about it if you got on the deck, because I'm going to go over that in a minute and clean that all up properly. It's just a bit of something really to lubricate things on that first time you start it, because it's all dry as a bone in there otherwise, which is not ideal. The last thing I'm going to do is go damaging stuff. Like that. Right, so what I'll do now is I'll clean off with a rag, or a clean rag, all the oil I've just got all over the top of the deck. Then we'll drop the head gasket on, make sure that's all correct and the right one. No reason to doubt it, but it's always worth checking twice. Once you put it together, it's a hell of a lot of work to take it apart again if you've got that wrong. So then we'll drop all the studs in, and then it's just a case of dropping the head on. Obviously you want to make sure the head's all clean and everything before you put it on. In this case it's literally been skimmed before and it hasn't been used, so it's perfect really just to wipe off, and it's ready to rock and roll. Right, so obviously the next stage is to drop the head gasket on and make sure that's the right one. So I've kept it in the packet up till now. Normally do that. These do go rusty if you keep them. Believe it or not, I actually bought a head gasket for this when I took it off the road a couple of years ago. It never got used, and it wasn't in a packet, and it's now scrap. Right, so we'll drop the gasket down on top. Obviously what I'm trying to do here is make sure everything's got a hole underneath it that lines up. So we've got oil feed critically needs to have the right hole, obviously the two drains and all the waterways around the cylinder bores. So that all looks good. Right, so as before, and with most of my engine builds, we're going to be using ALP head studs to fasten the block down, so fasten the head onto the block. These are actually different ones than what I used on my previous engine. They're a different length, I think I mentioned that before. So what we'll do now is go ahead and screw these into the block. When you're doing this, these don't need to be bolted into the head, into the block very tight. They're just a case of winding them until they stop really. Obviously it's when you put the nut on the top, that's when you're actually torquing it down. So there's no reason for these to be ridiculously tight into the block at all. I think they recommend you just put a light bit of oil on the base of the threads. I've got a little bit of grease in the threads already, but as long as they go in easily, I don't really have any problem with just putting them in. The critical bit is when you're actually torquing to use the lubricant that comes with them on the threads. The idea behind that is basically so that the predefined friction between the nut and the thread is always the same, because you're using the torque that they've specified, so that basically when you're torquing it using a torque wrench, you'll always get the same clamping force. Obviously if it's on a dry thread, your torque wrench will click quicker because of the added friction between the nut and the stud. So by using their lubricant, it kind of makes that the same for everybody. So we'll go ahead and bang these studs in now. As I said, they shouldn't be tight. You should be able to just wind them in with your fingers. If they're tight, then you probably need to tap them out, because they do go rusty. It's just an iron block. So we'll bang those in now. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Right, so we're just going to go in with this normal T-Allen key. I'm just going to nip each one, just so they don't move. Again, there's no need to tighten this up excessively at all. It's literally just so that they're in and they won't just back out easily. Right, so I'll put the head down on top now. Just do it slowly and carefully so they don't damage anything. And of course now it's time to put the supplied nuts and washers on, but not before you put the lube that I was talking about on. So the first thing you want to do now is just apply some fastener assembly lubricant from ARP, just around the studs. You don't need very much, you know, it's just literally enough for the nuts to ride on. Then use your supplied ARP one washer on each stud, and then the nuts that come with it. So they supply all that in the box whenever you buy studs from ARP. I'm trying to set him talk the head down now. There's lots of different ways you can go about doing this, and I'm sure however I do it, it's probably wrong in the world of YouTube. But ARP specify 105 foot-pound. I actually take them up to 110. I run my normal sequence centre out. I've never ever had a problem doing that. So that's the way I do it personally. You might do it differently. I don't actually take them straight up to 110. I'll do them in 3 stages normally. I just prefer it to do that way, sort of relieve the stress across the head as you go. So I'll just start in the middle and I'll cross my way out, and then we'll take the torque setting up to the next setting and repeat, and then right up to the top setting, and then go right over them a second time to check them. And then we'll speed this bit of the video up.
Halfway through the procedure, Chris will be sat down on the thing, holding on to the engine block, trying to keep it still.
Yeah. Right, that's all torqued down, so we'll give it 5 minutes and then I'll just whip over them again to make sure it's all good. Well, now that the heads are all bolted down and torqued down, the next sort of step is going to be to put all the lifters and rockers and camshafts, everything back in the head. Something I forgot to mention actually before, this head, I've actually upgraded the valve springs. That was actually the main reason I basically took the engine off the road back in its MTDI form originally, was purely down to the fact that I was actually floating the inlet valves with the boost that I was running before. So obviously back with the XJD, I was quite comfortably able to put sort of 60 psi in the inlet, and the springs were more than capable of, you know, shutting the valves back up on that. So I've never really had to touch it before, but I noticed straight away with this engine that anything over that and the engine was just useless, and you've got that distinctive noise from the exhaust. So obviously I took it apart really on that basis, and obviously it just hasn't gone back together until now. So I've managed to find some springs that fit, which are significantly stronger than the original ones, so we should be able to really crank up the pressure again on the inlet now and start making some power hopefully. But obviously that does then increase all the strain on all the other valve train components. I thought long and hard about it, and I did consider sort of swapping over, putting some solid lifters in it, but I've decided in the long run, well the short run for now, to leave it all as it should be. Because I mean, in theory there shouldn't really be a problem. The lifters in this engine are actually exactly the same units as fitted to a lot of other popular engines, and certainly engines that are turning a lot more RPMs than what we will be doing here, sort of petrol alternatives. So I mean, I don't really see any reason they're going to cause a problem, but then I could be wrong. So I'm going to run with them for now and see how it goes. Really, I'd rather run it and prove it to be a problem than sort of go to the effort of changing it now for really unknown reasons. It just seems a bit silly, because obviously the hydraulic lifter and roller rocker system is a better idea for the longevity of the top end. So if we can keep it that way, it'll be ideal. As a precaution, well, I had to replace some of the rockers anyway. I actually had damage to the rockers. I'm not really sure if that happened in my ownership or before me, but there's basically a lot of wear on the ends of them, which was actually resulting in certain valves not getting the same lift as others. Which was confusing us for a while, trying to work out what was going on there, but that was down to worn rockers. So I was going to replace all of those anyway. So as a precaution, I've actually decided to go ahead and replace the lifters and the rockers. So we've actually got a new set of rockers and lifters from Motive Engineering. So obviously in here we've got the rockers. These are an OEM quality item. There's nothing fancy about them, they're just completely stock, but they are obviously a decent brand, not Chinese crap, hopefully. So, and then we've got the hydro lifters in the pots here. If the camera can focus in on that, obviously not. So next stage really is to start putting the lifters in. I'll get the assembly lube out. Obviously you want to make sure there's plenty of lubrication around all these components when it's all going in together, just for those few moments when you're firing up. So I'll stick you off on the tripod and we'll stick some lifters in the head.
Do like your therapy, sir. I do like my therapy, sir. See what I say. So I thought, let's get on board with this and let's modernise Shakespeare in our own special way.
Oh, okay, I think I see what's coming.
With the help of a few famous... Calvin Harris.
Adam Montague.
Anyway, you can have a look at this Shakespeare meeting. It's very, very good. And you can flood your social media with quotes and make look like the right brain box. James, BBC.
Right, that's all the lifters in, the rockers on top. So now I can drop the camshafts in and top of the head down really. I need to do a few other bits and pieces in here first to clean it out a bit better. Right, I just temporarily put a flywheel on the side with a couple bolts just so I can lock the crank off. Again, I've just pushed the cam pulley on the side so I can lock that off. And the two camshafts are in now and in time with a new timing chain. So it's really just a case of putting the tensioners on and then the top of the head can go on with some sealant. Right, that's the cam support back on and all the bolts are torqued down. And the little cam chain tensioner, which is an oil fed with spring assist, that's put back on, and put some Loctite on those nuts as well. So it's pretty much ready to put the rocker cover on now, but I haven't got that here at the moment.